When Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s autopsy report was finally released, the racing world was shaken by the chilling details it revealed. Known to millions as the Intimidator, Earnhardt was one of NASCAR's most fearless and accomplished legends. Over more than 2 decades, he carved out a legacy defined by grit, dominance, and unmatched skill, securing 7 championships and becoming a fan favorite. His black No. 3 Chevrolet wasn't just a race car, it was a symbol, instantly recognizable. Across American motorsports, but the findings from his autopsy were so severe, they forced NASCAR to act immediately and overhaul its safety standards. So what exactly did the doctors discover that made so many people say, "This is disturbing"? February 18th, 2001 began like any other race day at Daytona International Speedway. Behind the wheel of his iconic No. 3 Earnhardt was ready to battle once again. The grandstands were packed, the engines roared to life, and the excitement was electric. No one could have imagined that by the end of that day, NASCAR would lose one of its greatest icons. Dale had become a cornerstone of the sport, famous for walking away from crashes that would have ended careers. He had a toughness that made him seem almost indestructible, which is why what followed came as such a crushing blow. On the final lap of the Daytona 500, Dale was doing what he did best, protecting his teammates. Dale Jr. and Michael Waltrip were pushing for first and second place, while Sr. stayed back, blocking other racers from advancing. It was classic teamwork, executed by a master of the sport. But just as they approached turn 4, with the checkered flag in sight, disaster struck. Sterling Marlin's car nudged the rear of Earnhardt's, nothing unusual in racing. But at nearly 160 miles per hour, even a small bump can turn fatal. Earnhardt's car suddenly dropped down the track, then rocketed upward toward the wall. Ken Schrader's car pulled up alongside, and the two made contact. Then in a heartbeat, Dale's car slammed headfirst into the concrete barrier. To the crowd, it didn't look catastrophic. There was no explosion, no flying debris, just a hard hit, and then the car rolling to a stop. But something was terribly wrong. The full truth of those final seconds wouldn't come until the autopsy revealed the devastating internal injuries that couldn't be seen from the outside. Ken Schrader was the first to reach the wreck. As a veteran racer, he'd seen his share of crashes and knew what to expect. But when he peered into Dale's car, his face changed instantly. Later, he told reporters he couldn't describe what he saw, but because of privacy concerns, but because it was too horrifying to put into words. That reaction was the first signal that this was no ordinary wreck. Paramedics arrived quickly, trying to extract Dale from the mangled car and rush him to safety. But even as he was placed on a stretcher, something felt off. There was no movement, no moaning, no words, just silence. The ambulance rushed him to Halifax Medical Center, just 2 miles away. The doctors there were experienced in dealing with high-speed crash injuries, and they were ready. But this time, readiness wouldn't be enough. As fans cheered Waltrip's victory and Dale Jr.'s strong finish, a much darker reality was unfolding. Behind hospital walls, the medical team worked furiously, uncovering the kinds of injuries that would later be detailed in the autopsy injuries that would rock NASCAR to its core. At 5:16 p.m. Eastern Time, the devastating news was confirmed. Dale Earnhardt Sr. was gone. The man who had outlasted dozens of wrecks and reigned supreme on the track had died. Yet it wasn't just his death that stunned the world, it was the reason behind it. People demanded to know how a seemingly minor crash could claim the life of NASCAR's toughest competitor. The collision was so fast, even TV cameras barely caught it. Many fans in the stands didn't realize the gravity of it until hours later. NASCAR quickly launched a full-scale investigation. Officials combed through video footage, analyzed the impact frame by frame, and inspected every inch of the wrecked car to determine what went wrong. The first signs pointed to a standard crash, but deeper scrutiny suggested otherwise. As experts examined the car, things didn't add up. The damage wasn't as bad as it had been and other wrecks drivers had walked away from. The cockpit was mostly intact. The steering wheel hadn't budged. The seat remained in its proper position. From the outside, this looked like a crash that might leave someone banged up but not dead. Appearances, however, were deceiving. What Dale's autopsy revealed painted a far darker picture. Though the crash didn't seem fatal, the internal damage told another story, one that would change how NASCAR approached safety forever. According to the autopsy, the most severe injuries weren't visible. The true damage was internal and horrifying. These findings forced experts to reevaluate what they thought they knew about crash dynamics. If someone as skilled and seemingly indestructible as Dale Earnhardt could die in such a crash, what did that say about the safety of every other driver on the track? NASCAR needed answers, and fast. The autopsy would deliver them. But what it revealed would be almost impossible to accept. The doctors didn't just find the cause of Dale's death. They uncovered a flaw in the system. NASCAR had been overlooking a critical safety issue for years. The autopsy took place at the Volusia County Medical Examiner's office, a facility used to handling complex and tragic cases. But this one was different. The eyes of the world were watching. Every finding would be dissected. Every detail would matter. The conclusions would help shape the future of motorsports. Dr. Thomas Parsons, the associate medical examiner, took on the responsibility, knowing that millions were waiting for his report. He understood that the truth had to be clear, complete, and brutally honest. And what he found shocked even seasoned professionals. At first, the injuries seemed serious, but survivable: broken ribs, a fractured ankle, chest injuries from the harness. All common in crashes. But deeper into the exam, Dr. Parsons found what no one had expected. The fatal injury was a basilar skull fracture, a break at the base of the skull that affects the brainstem. It's one of the most lethal injuries imaginable because it instantly cuts off communication between the brain and body. The fracture, known as a ring fracture, encircled the base of Dale's skull. It had been caused by the violent whipping motion of his head during the impact back and forth in a split second. That motion caused catastrophic internal trauma. And the most heartbreaking part, Dale Earnhardt died instantly. There was no pain, no chance to fight, no final words. For a man known for his grit and indomitable will, there was no struggle, just silence. In one instant, NASCAR's Iron Man was gone. It was an abrupt and sorrowful end. Yet the autopsy wasn't over. Dr. Parsons still had more grim findings to uncover, each one shedding more light on how such a legendary driver could be lost so quickly. As he examined Dale further, Dr. Parsons made another alarming discovery, one that would ripple through the racing world. The safety equipment, designed to protect him, had failed in unexpected ways. These revelations would soon become some of the most debated parts of the autopsy report. Dale's 5-point harness showed clear signs of extreme force. Deep impressions on his body proved it had tried to restrain him. However, there was a serious failure in the left lap belt, the strap meant to secure the left side of his waist. The autopsy revealed this crucial belt had completely torn. Without it, Dale's lower body wasn't properly restrained, allowing him to move forward during the crash. That motion may have played a key role in the skull fracture that killed him. The broken belt raised troubling questions about NASCAR's safety protocols. How could equipment drivers trusted with their lives simply fall apart? Was there a manufacturing flaw? Was it installed incorrectly? Or had the crash created forces too extreme for any belt to withstand? Bill Simpson, whose company produced the seatbelt, found himself at the center of a firestorm. Some blamed his product for Dale's death. Others defended it, arguing the belt performed as well as it could under the circumstances. The debate grew so intense that Simpson began receiving death threats from furious fans. But the most unsettling part was what it meant for other drivers. If Dale Earnhardt's safety gear could fail, every racer was at risk. The autopsy pointed to a problem far bigger than a single fatal crash. It exposed deep flaws in NASCAR's trusted safety systems. And yet, as the investigations progressed, an even more alarming truth surfaced, one that explained what truly caused Dale's fatal injuries. While the broken seatbelt was significant, it wasn't the main cause. The real reason was something that could have been prevented. That realization was perhaps the most unsettling detail of all. As more experts studied Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s autopsy report, they uncovered something profoundly troubling. Dale wasn't the first NASCAR driver to die from a basilar skull fracture. In fact, 3 others, Sadim, Petty, Kenny Irwin, Tony Roper, had died from the same injury just months before the Daytona 500. This wasn't coincidence. It was a growing crisis. NASCAR had a deadly issue, and its leaders had failed to recognize it until it was too late. The disturbing findings in Dale's autopsy confirmed what many had feared a hidden threat had been endangering drivers for months. Dr. Randy Hanslick, president of the National Association of Medical Examiners, reviewed the 7-page report and validated those fears. Dale's basilar skull fracture was caused by the violent, whip-like motion of his head during the crash. It was a physics problem with a clear solution, but NASCAR had never required that solution. The Hans device, a head and neck support system, connected a driver's helmet to their shoulders. It could have stopped Dale's head from snapping forward and back with such deadly force. The device had been available for years, but most drivers, including Dale, refused to wear it. Dale had been one of its loudest critics. He believed that Hans' device was uncomfortable and limited his head movement during races. He saw danger as part of the sport and believed too much safety gear would ruin racing's thrill. Tragically, that belief may have cost him his life. Robert Hubbard, inventor of the Hans device, reviewed the autopsy and reached a painful conclusion. "I can't promise the Hans device would have saved everybody in this kind of crash," he said, "but it would have helped him." Those words haunted the racing world. The most heartbreaking truth was how avoidable Dale's death really was. Technology to save him existed. The knowledge was there. The equipment was ready. But tradition, pride, and resistance to change kept it out. Of his car, that February day, when the autopsy results became public, new questions emerged. People wondered if NASCAR and the medical examiner were revealing the full truth. The known details were already disturbing. But rumors suggested something even worse was being hidden. Focus turned to the autopsy photographs. In Florida, these records are usually public. But Dale's widow, Teresa Earnhardt, went to court to block their release. She argued that making them public would bring unnecessary pain to her family and Dale's fans. The Orlando Sentinel challenged her, saying, "The public deserved to see all the evidence." They wanted an independent expert to review the photos and confirm the conclusions. The legal battle dragged on for months, leaving more questions than answers. Eventually, the Florida legislature passed the Earnhardt Family Protection Act, law making autopsy photos, videos, and recordings confidentially, lest a court found a good reason to release them. Some fans began forming conspiracy theories, wondering what the photos might reveal. They speculated, and questions remained. Dale Earnhardt's injuries were more severe than initially reported, and rumors of hidden problems only deepened the mystery. Conflicting statements from emergency responders fueled speculation. Tommy Probst, one of the first to reach Dale's car, claimed the seatbelt was intact. But members of Richard Childress Racing said the belt had been completely torn. These opposing accounts sparked even more questions about what really happened. Dr. Barry Myers, a crash injury expert from Duke University, was brought in to independently investigate Dale's death. His findings helped clear up parts of the controversy, but also revealed troubling truths that made the tragedy even harder to accept. When the truth finally came out, it was both simpler and more complicated than any conspiracy theory. But by then, the damage was done. NASCAR's commitment to safety and transparency was under serious doubt. Rebuilding trust would take years. NASCAR launched a massive investigation into Dale's death, spending over $1 million and taking months to complete. The final report, over 300 pages long, became the most detailed safety study in NASCAR history. It confirmed the grim autopsy findings and showed how multiple failures had combined to cause the fatal crash. Investigators recreated every moment, using high-speed cameras, computer models, and crash test dummies. They found Dale's car hit the wall at an angle between 55 and 59 degrees, concentrating the full force into the cockpit. While his speed between 157 and 161 miles per hour wasn't unusual, the impact angle and the violent motion of his head made all the difference. Crash tests with similar vehicles revealed Dale experienced a crash impulse lasting just 80 milliseconds less than a tenth of a second. But in that brief instant, his body endured a force equal to falling from 62 feet. The investigation team also examined Dale's car in minute detail, every bolt weld and safety device. The car had performed as designed, but that design wasn't enough to protect against every crash scenario. The most shocking discovery was this: Dale's death had been preventable in several ways. A Hans device could have saved his life softer. Walls might have reduced the impact. Even small adjustments to the seat or harness might have changed the outcome. Perhaps the most critical takeaway was that NASCAR had ignored clear warning signs. Previous deaths from similar skull fractures should have triggered immediate safety reforms. Instead, changes came only after the death of the sport's biggest icon. The conclusions of this investigation sparked the most significant safety overhaul in NASCAR's history, but those changes came too late for Dale Earnhardt. His passing became the turning point that ultimately protected many lives, although Dale Earnhardt could not be brought back. The painful truths revealed in his autopsy spurred safety improvements that have saved hundreds of lives. NASCAR used the loss as a catalyst to completely overhaul its safety protocols, and outcome that Dale himself would likely have supported. Within months, the Hans device equipment Dale had chosen not to wear was made mandatory for all drivers. It became a rule that every driver would now benefit from the technology that might have saved Dale's life. NASCAR also installed safer barriers at all tracks. These soft walls, made from steel and foam, absorbed crash energy rather than reflecting it, cutting impact forces by as much as 70% and making deadly crashes far more survivable. Race cars were also completely redesigned with safety at the forefront. The car of tomorrow featured a wider frame, a reinforced cockpit, and energy-absorbing materials throughout. Driver seats were moved farther from doors, and roll cages were reinforced using insights from Dale's crash. Medical response was transformed as well. Crash data recorders were installed in every car, giving medical teams real-time data on crash forces. NASCAR upgraded its mobile medical units and introduced new standards for treating head and neck injuries. The evidence is undeniable. Since the tragic death of Dale Earnhardt Sr. in 2001, not a single driver has lost their life during competition in NASCAR's top 3 series. There have been dramatic crashes, cars flipping, catching fire, and experiencing violent impacts that appeared far worse than Dale's fatal wreck. But each time, the drivers have walked away unharmed. One of the most remarkable examples is Ryan Newman, who survived a terrifying crash at Daytona in 2020. His car flipped at nearly 200 miles per hour and was struck by another vehicle while upside down. Yet he was released from the hospital just 2 days later. His survival, like many others, is credited to the safety measures that emerged from the analysis of Dale's autopsy. Dale Earnhardt Jr. has often remarked that his father's greatest accomplishment wasn't his 7 championships or 76 race wins. Was the safety revolution his death sparked? Every time a crash occurs that once would have been fatal but isn't, Dale Sr.'s legacy becomes even more powerful. Though reading the details of his autopsy was heartbreaking, that information laid the groundwork for what is now considered the safest era in racing history. While fans still mourn the loss of the Intimidator and remember his fearless racing style, they also find solace in knowing his legacy lives on through the lives he's helped save. NASCAR came to understand that no tradition is worth more than a human life. What was once a sport known for glorifying danger has shifted to one that celebrates survival. This transformation has made the sport safer and better for everyone involved. What began as a devastating loss became the driving force behind the most significant safety overhaul in motorsports. Today, every driver who walks away from a crash owes a debt to the hard lessons learned on that tragic day in February 2001. What do you believe was the most vital safety improvement that resulted from Dale's passing? How might NASCAR look today if that day had never happened? Share your thoughts in the comments below.